Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland C Sharp User Group. A little bit about the group. We meet every month, typically every fourth Wednesday. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to .NET. You can find the meeting information posted at the link listed at the bottom of the slide for both past as well as future meetings. I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, PostSharp and DevExpress, for sponsoring the post-meeting prizes that will be given away using the eval forms. We'd also like to thank the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the meetup site. And last but not least, NIS Technologies for sponsoring the virtual meeting space. A special offer from Manning.com. We have a 35% off a selection of books at the link listed at the bottom of the slide with the discount code listed MTPCLEC21. The discount code as well as the link will be posted in chat shortly after the presentation. Some general information. Please keep in mind that participation is encouraged. And for those of you that are joining for the first time, the purpose of the user group is essentially to be a platform for people to showcase their skill set as well as to network with one another. Participation is always encouraged, and I always say the only stupid question is the one not being asked. However, when not speaking, kindly ask you to mute your microphones just to avoid any background noise. And as always, we like to keep it casual but organized. So jump in with questions or comments, but at the same time, we want to give our presenter enough time to go through the presentation. Lastly, you can refer to this presentation afterwards. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. So for tonight's feature presentation, it is Optimize the Impact of Your Technical Skills, and it is brought to you by Todd Larsen. Todd has 13 years of experience of building and scaling consumer products. He's the founding engineer at Digit.co. He's also a startup advisor, and he is the former global platform engineer at Groupon.com, one of my favorite retail sites. He focuses on moving fast and leading teams to create a positive impact on technology. And so with that, Todd, welcome to the Cleveland C Sharp User Group. Glad to have you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. I'm happy to be here. So, I know a lot of meetups, we really focus on technical skills and how to stack on new skills or expand what we already know. But today I actually want to talk about how do we get more mileage out of what we already know? And how do we make more impact with the technical skills that we've already got? So real quick, I just want to start with what our mission is at Tech Leaders. And this really comes from my personal career mission, which is always making more impact with each unit of work that I do. And I kind of define a unit of work as 1 hour of work. And so over the course of my career, as an IC, an individual contributor, I was really excited about, shipping code quickly that made a big difference for the users. But over time, I wanted to grow my career more into leadership because I realized there was an upper bound to how much I could do as an individual. And so that's when I moved into leadership and management and have continued to do that throughout my career. And I believe, a lot of us in tech are really underappreciated about what we can bring to the table. And so this goes into the mission that we're all about, which is helping us rise to the top and take our technical perspectives into the actual leadership positions and actually guide the business. Because a lot of times, and maybe you can relate, you've worked with sales teams or other non-technical people, and a lot of the times the decisions made can be really weird, and just because they don't have that context of the technical side. So I believe we need more technical people at the top of businesses and actually making these key decisions as tech, the impact of tech continues to grow. So that's a little bit about our mission. And how do we actually do that? How do we have a process for helping people advance their careers in a very methodical way. And it really comes down to this transition of going from reactive, working on tasks and working on what's given to you and what's assigned to you, to then being more proactive and actually identifying opportunities and problems proactively, to then the point of being a leader and a person that's really thinking strategically and long term. And I think the more we can move from reactive to proactive to strategic, it makes the results of what we do much stronger and more impactful. And so this is the overall process that we help people through with their career. And at that point, then you kind of have a choice. When you've made this transition, we help some people move into the executive track, which would be, being a CTO, let's say, or a VP of engineering. Or there's another track, and that's the entrepreneurial track. Maybe you want to be a technical founder, or you want to start your own business, maybe professional services, consulting, whatever it is. We help people go through this transition of reactive to proactive to strategic, and then help you with whichever track is best for what you want to do and what you want to do longer term for your career, whether it's an executive or an entrepreneur. So real quick, I just want to talk about, this is what we're going to get into now that you've got a little context about, how to make that transition to make more impact with your technical skills. I just want to talk about some of the problems that we often face in our career that can stall us out, whether we're trying to get promoted or find a new role somewhere. I've really found over the last few years of helping people with their careers, it's three main problems. And this is kind of the distillation of what I've experienced in my own career. And then I've seen the same pattern over and over. And so I suspect you'll resonate with some of these problems too. And then I want to give a couple of tools that we teach for the folks in our program that you can use today or tomorrow and start applying these things directly to your day-to-day to help get around and solve some of these problems. So they're not necessarily going to be the full solution to the problem, but it's going to be some action you can take to make this really practical so you can walk away with something today that's going to help you. And then the last thing is I'm going to end it with an invitation to join us. And, we've got a program and a private community for people all focused on this stuff. And if you want to make these kinds of changes in your career and get this kind of clarity for yourself in a faster way where you're around other people that are like-minded, I've got an invitation at the end that you're welcome to accept. So let's start with the problems. And as I said, I've boiled it down to three main problems that I've seen all over the world. We've been helping people in the US, in Europe, and Latin America grow their careers, and the same three problems keep coming up. And the first one is being bored. I think there's so many people that are not fully utilized in their role. And, they're kind of waiting, some people refer to it as golden handcuffs, they're kind of waiting for the next big opportunity. And so they're just not feeling fully challenged. And when you don't feel fully challenged and used to your highest value, it's just not a good feeling. You feel like you can do more and you're capable of more. And so this idea of being bored really can show itself in many different ways in our career. But that's one of the biggest problems that I see and have felt myself. Being ignored, I think, is another huge problem. And we're going to get into some things you can do to increase your influence. And what that means is, how you get buy-in for your ideas. Maybe you're presenting a new architecture to your team, or even just you're making the case for why something needs to be refactored. Whether we're in sales or not, we're always selling our ideas. And so there's nothing worse than that feeling of being ignored or feeling like we're ignored and our ideas are not getting picked up at the pace that we would want them to be picked up, whether it's we're trying to influence our team or we're trying to influence a manager above us or some peers to the side of us. Being ignored is another huge problem that we face often in our careers at certain times. And so I'm going to show you one of the frameworks that we teach in our program to help you overcome that feeling of that sense of feeling of being ignored, and a way that you can really dial up your influence for whoever you're trying to convince. And then the last big problem that I would say we all face in our career is just sometimes just feeling confused. And that could be confusion about like, what's the next step? What's the next ideal role for us? How can we navigate some challenging situation in our day-to-day? Or in other ways, it sometimes comes up as imposter syndrome. And we'll talk about this here in a minute. But when you're facing being bored or ignored, I really call that the technical box. And sometimes you're in, there's a ceiling and you're kind of stuck at a certain level where maybe you cannot increase your influence upwards, or you feel like you've kind of topped out in the roles that are available at the company that you're currently at. And then other times, sometimes it's more of a silo, and maybe there's this just disconnect between your team and other teams, or your whole engineering organization and the rest of the business. And sometimes you have both. Sometimes there's a ceiling and a silo. And so this idea of this technical box is oftentimes where companies will put technical people, especially if they're not if it's run by non-technical people. And so this is the worst place to be. And I've had jobs at times where I felt like I was put in a box and just categorized in a very narrow way, and it really was frustrating for me. And so we'll show you this influential tool later that's going to help kind of break out of that box a bit by bit. The other big problem I mentioned is the confusion. And sometimes that's just like not knowing what to do next, not knowing how to do a certain role, not knowing, where we should take our career. And this confusion can just really be frustrating in a low grade way over a long period of time. And so fixing this uncertainty about where to go in your day to day and also where to go in your career longer term is a big part of what we help people with. And the other big element of confusion, I would say, is imposter syndrome. And the really interesting thing about imposter syndrome is that it happens at every level. I mean, I've experienced it at every big inflection point in my career. When I got my first big IC job, I was a junior and I started to doubt, what I really knew and what I could actually bring to the table. And so I had some self-doubt, some sense of imposter syndrome at the earliest stage of my career. But then when I got my first senior level position, then I started to, again, the doubt came back a little bit and I thought, gosh, am I really ready for this next role? Same thing happened when I got my first engineering manager role. I started to doubt, like, am I this kind of person? Is this really what my career path should be? What will happen if I get away from the technology? Will I lose my core value that got me to this point in my career? These are the kinds of doubts that can creep in, and they can happen at every single level. I mean, I felt it when I became a CTO for the first time, and when I became a general partner to a private equity firm. The first time I got that, I was like, am I really an investor? Is that who I am now? And so this imposter syndrome is so nefarious because it can show itself at every level of our career. And if we don't turn it off and handle it and manage it in a way that doesn't hold us back, it can actually put a governor on our careers and really just place a ceiling and a limit on where we can go. And so helping people with imposter syndrome is another big piece of what we do. So we have a process for how we help people accelerate their career and actually get clear on what to do next. And so if you look at this graphic here, you can see in the middle I place the tech leader logo, and I think that's where we all want to be. We want to have more influence, we want to have more impact, and we want to have more income. So I've identified, like, to me, these are the big three things, the three I's that we all want more of in our careers to really have a happy career and a satisfying career. And so we've got these different stages, and this is in our program where we help you first identify can't see my mouse here, I guess, but I'm circling the identify circle here. We help you first identify a clear direction of where you want to go. Maybe that's getting promotion within the company you're at. Maybe that's getting another job somewhere else. And so just identifying that clear direction makes it much easier to advance with confident action and actually take action on what your plan is to get there. Once you've advanced and taken action and you've gotten to that new place in your career, then this is oftentimes where people kind of are not sure what to do next, because you've got the job. Well, now it's time to, like, shine in that role. And when we're entering into a new role, that's often when that doubt can come in first. And we're always trying to over deliver and really impress when we get into a new role. And so this shine phase is a really important phase to make sure you don't go back to where you came from. I've talked to so many people that moved into leadership or management and then went back to IC work because they felt like they didn't like it or they weren't set up for success to actually make it work. And so this shine stage is all about staying at the level we're at and continuing to grow. And this becomes a virtuous cycle. When you can identify the clear direction, you can advance confident action, and then you can shine in your ideal role. And this is something that you can do throughout the entirety of your career. It's a repeatable process that works at every level. And it just creates a nice, like, structure and framework around, like, what are we doing? What stage are we at now? What's the next step? And so this is a key piece of our program. So if we dig into the identify phase a little bit, this is what you can start to do for yourself as you're thinking about this stuff is what are the big goals that you have for your career long term? What's the value that you really bring to the table? And also, what are the values that you hold as important in the types of companies you want to work with and work for? And then what are the milestones or the targets that you're going to set to actually reach the longer term goals? A lot of times people will have these big lofty goals, but they won't have intermediate targets to hit along the way. And so it's really important to identify these three things in this phase. And it makes it much easier then to get into the advanced phase. And so I want to talk about a case study from this advanced phase. I'm calling him Board Bob, but we helped Board Bob get out of his software architect job where he was just not feeling like he was working at his best. You know, he was at a big company that, you know, the name you would all recognize. And he was, you know, he was proud of the role that he had, but wasn't satisfied in the work that he was doing because he felt like he could do a lot more and make a bigger impact and help more companies than just the one that he was helping. And so we helped him, you know, come up with a plan to actually move into becoming a fractional CTO. And that allowed him then to help lots of companies simultaneously and help on the architecture across multiple industries. And so this led to a lot of just satisfaction for him, because one of his key values is that you know, he gets to help multiple companies at one time. He realized that was something that really was important to him in being happy long term. And so the fractional CTO model, we helped him stand up for himself. It allows you to work with multiple clients at the same time. And so this really keyed into his core values. And we were able to help him with this plan in less than 12 months. So he was able to, you know, have some conversations with his manager about where he was headed in his career, what that looked like and what that meant for him. And then helped him get some of his initial clients. And then he actually ended up landing a full-time CTO position. So we helped Board Bob go all the way from software architect to fractional CTO to now full-time CTO. So that's an example of identifying very clearly what he wanted near-term and long-term to be able to make a clear plan to advance and then actually shine in the role once he's there. So if you want to start thinking about how you can identify the next stage for your career, here's some questions that you can start with. And we've got different tools and assessments that we use with many more questions like this that go even deeper into what you want and where you want to go. But these are three main questions that you can start with today. And, you know, we all have lots of skills, but not all skills are as valuable as others. And so it's really about thinking, what's the most valuable part of your existing skill set? And then also, you know, what's the most valuable way for you to spend your time? I think a lot of times when we're working on technical stuff, we get lost in the joy of building and the joy of engineering and creating something new. And if we want to move more into a proactive and a strategic mindset, it really requires letting go of some things and delegating some of that stuff that maybe we used to do that got us to this point in the career. And so it's really important to think about what's the most valuable way for you to spend your time where others on the team may not be able to provide that value. And so it's really important to focus on that specifically for yourself. And then the last is like, what's the most fun problems to solve? I think a lot of people get stuck on projects or in roles where they're doing the work, they're working the tickets, but they're not necessarily loving the problems they're solving. And, you know, when we're having fun, it's amazing what we're capable of. We can do so much more when we're having fun, and we can face all kinds of challenges. And so it's really important for long-term happiness to make sure you're focusing on, or at least identifying, what are the most fun problems to solve. Then it's much easier to put a strategic plan together to work on those specific problems, whether it's within a company or as an independent consultant. So if we move into the advanced phase, there's three main things that you really need to figure out to move through this phase quickly. And it's USP, that stands for your unique selling proposition. Now, I know we're not salespeople, but as I said before, we're always selling. If you have ideas, you're selling your ideas to your colleagues. And so if you're looking for a job, you're selling your skills and your expertise to an employer. We're always selling. And so it's really important to get clear on what is your unique selling proposition. What makes you different from all the other applicants or all the other candidates that are within the company that might be eligible for promotion. And so it's really worth getting clear on what makes you unique. And that could be a mix of skill set, experience that you've had, or problems that you like to solve. Once you got your USP figured out, then it's much easier to come up with the strategies that it'll take to get into that ideal role. So, depending on what is your USP, it might be if you're going to become a fractional CTO, you're going to have certain marketing and sales strategies to get clients. If you're looking to get promoted into a leadership position, let's say, there's going to be other strategies that you're going to use internally at the company to grow your reputation, build your network, and set up, some strategic alliances within the company that are going to help you as a leader. And then, once you've got your strategy set, then there's going to be different tactics that you take on a day-to-day basis. Maybe it's, building allies within the company that you can then work with more collaboratively once you're in a leadership position. Or if it's, getting consulting clients, there's some specific marketing tactics you might use to get your ideal client. And so it really comes down to, once you've got your USP figured out, then you can come up with a strategy to actually take action and get that ideal role through the tactics you use. And so we've got different playbooks and curriculum depending on what your goals are and what your USP is. And we've got all kinds of strategies and tactics that are going to help you get there. And that's a big part of what we teach in our program. So let's focus on a tactic that you can use tomorrow when you're back at work. And this is one of our most popular ones that people find really useful. And I hope this will maybe help you understand maybe cases in the past where you lost someone in an explanation. And then you can apply this to future situations when you're trying to be more influential. You're trying to get somebody to buy in on your idea, someone to support what you're doing. And so if I start here, so let me take a step back and say the problem that people in our industry often face when trying to be influential is that we dive right into the how. We dive right into the solution. And depending on who you're trying to convince, if it's a non-technical person or a person that's maybe not as technical as you, you're going to lose them in the details. And when you start with the how, which is where most of us jump straight to when we're trying to convince someone, like if somebody asks, what we should do here, sometimes people will jump straight into the nitty-gritty details. And at that point, oftentimes you've lost them. Even if they're technical, if you have not aligned on the what and the why, you can still lose a technical person in the how. And so the very first thing to understand about this diagram is don't start with the how. You actually need to start in this upper right quadrant, which is the why. If you can get alignment on the impact of what you're doing, it's going to make it much easier to get them bought in on the how. And so if you're not making it abundantly clear why something should be done, let's say it's a refactor of a key system or a certain feature that needs to be prioritized and shipped over something else, it can just become kind of just a conflict because people are not understanding why it's so important. So it can sometimes just be an impasse and just a stalemate where it's he said and she said, or whatever the situation is. And so if you start with why we're even having this conversation, why are we even talking about this refactor? Why is this new feature even proposed? It makes it much easier then to get into the what of what problem is that actually going to solve? What's going to be the impact of when we ship that? How is that going to help our users or our customers? Or how is that going to help some internal team? So if you can start with the what, why, then you can move into the what problem we're solving here. And then finally get into the how. And the how is where you're going to elaborate on the details, but you might find that because you started with the what and the why, you don't even have to elaborate on the details nearly as much. The how can often be more of a hand wave because people already bought into the what and the why. And then at that point, it's good to do some second guessing and some sanity checking. What if? We call this the possibility space. What if this goes wrong? What if there's something else that we should be doing here instead? What if this piece of the how fails in some way? This is where we're basically de-risking the decision and just making sure that what we're doing here is the right move. And so we call this quadrant the decision-making process. And you can use this to make your own decisions, but you can also use it to help others make decisions in a way that you want them to, right? So you're trying to influence them. You're trying to create a certain outcome from this conversation. This decision-making process right here is a huge key to making that influence and that buy-in much simpler. So just to recap, you want to start with the what and the why, then move into the how, and those are the details of what your actual solution is, and then what if. And so sometimes it takes multiple laps through this quadrant to get buy-in, but if you do it in this structured way, it's so much easier to get people to listen to your ideas and follow what you actually want them to do. So that's something you can start using right away. I want to talk about another case study, and I'm going to call him Ignored Kyle. He was feeling ignored in his organization. Again, he's at another big company. You would recognize it. You might even be using their products in a regular basis. But he basically felt ignored and underappreciated to the point where he got laid off around, let's see, this would have been January of 2022. So when he got laid off, it created just kind of an inflection point where he's like, what do I really want to be doing? I wasn't happy in my last role, so I'm actually not that upset about getting laid off. But he did have a bit of a chip on his shoulder that he felt ignored. And so we had to help him really step back from what he does and look objectively at what the value is and what are his strengths and what are, what does he bring to the table? And so when he was able to step back and really get clear on where he wanted to go, he realized he actually wanted to be a technical product manager. And so once he had that clarity, it was so much easier to quickly get that first role because he was showing up very confidently in the interviews. He was, really taking big action in getting the interviews in the first place and getting the opportunities generated because he was so excited about where he was going. So when you have that clear path that you've identified, it makes it much easier to advance. And then once you're in that role, then it's going back to the original diagram, it's about shining. And so, he's since gotten promoted beyond this TPM role to now he's a group product manager. And so he's all done that within just about a year now, which has been amazing to see. And so it all came back to how he could influence other people using that diagram that I just showed you. That's, not all he did, but that's a big piece of what he did. After he got clear on his value, he started to, create alignment with decision makers, whether it was a hiring manager or when he got into the role, he was using the decision-making process to influence his stakeholders and get people to follow his plans. So that single framework, the decision-making process, has been a huge key to Kyle feeling not ignored. So now we're moving to the third and final phase of this process, which is shining in the ideal role. And so this really comes down to skills. What are the new skills that you might need for this new level, this new role that you're in? What's the mindset that you need to carry forward? And what's the wisdom that you should have in your back pocket for when you need it? And this often it looks like if we have mentors in our careers, they're always giving us this wisdom, these mistakes that we can avoid that they made already. And so this kind of wisdom is really invaluable because it really just flattens the learning curve for us in our careers. So we see the skills, the mindset, and the wisdom as the three big components of what it takes to shine in this new ideal role that you've achieved. So I want to focus on one of the tools that we use to upgrade your mindset. And This is huge, and it's something that I have to still to this day remind myself about and check in on, because as my day-to-day duties change, I have to update my definition of work. And what I mean by that is, if you think back to maybe your first job as a junior developer, your definition of work was just like working tickets and writing code and just doing the task level stuff that's given to you. But if you keep operating that way, if you still think of your definition of work being just doing whatever's given to you and assigned to you, that's going to become a limit to where your career goes. And so you have to, as you grow, you have to update your definition of work. And you may have already been doing this unknowingly as you've grown your career. But if you're not doing this intentionally and proactively, it can kind of sneak up on you. And so as you go from, let's say, an individual contributor to a manager or a leader for the first time, you have to update your definition of work again. You have to say, well, what is my job now in this new role? Is it really to write code every day? Is it really to just work the tasks, or is it to now delegating the tasks, or is it creating the project plan, or whatever it is? And so this idea of definition of work is something that you want to check in on. Well, it depends how fast your company and your career is growing. You might want to do it quarterly, you might want to do it annually. But going back to how you think of your definition of work, like what should I be doing on a day-to-day basis? This is a really important thing to stay in touch with and continually refine as your responsibilities change, as your ambitions change. So I want to talk about overwhelmed Angela. She was one of the people that came through the program who, she had one team. She was an engineering manager with one team, and she felt overwhelmed with just one. And again, at a big company that you would probably recognize, the company was growing really rapidly, and they were consolidating the org chart a little bit. And so they actually needed her suddenly to take on more responsibility. And so she just felt at her absolute capacity and just at her limit because she was already overwhelmed with one team. How could she possibly take on more than that? And so we helped her do that very specifically by helping her update her definition of work. Because what we found is that she was actually feeling a bit of imposter syndrome, stuck in this middle ground where she was no longer an individual contributor. She was leading teams, and she kind of started to feel like she was losing touch with the tech and started to question, like, what is the actual value I bring to the table if I can't do all the technical solutions because my team is doing it? Well, what's my purpose in this new role as an engineering manager? So she just really had this kind of existential crisis of like, what should I be doing? How should I operate? What should my day-to-day look like? And unfortunately, at the company, they weren't really providing any guidance. And I think I felt this, and maybe you felt this too. There's not a lot of tactical advice that can come from our employers about how to actually be a leader, how to actually be a manager, or just how to influence the others on our team in a stronger way. So we helped Angela start with updating her definition of work. And we have a simple retrospective process. You might recognize this from running retros on production incidents or other problems. And it's really simple. It's what are the things we should start doing? What are the things we should stop doing? And what are the things we should continue doing? And so if you just ask yourself these three questions every time you check in on your definition of work, you're going to notice things that you should be delegating or assigning to someone else on the team. If you're a manager, you should not be doing low level things that any junior developer could be doing. And so there's some things that we got to let go as we continue to grow our career and take on more responsibility. But there's also things we need to start doing that maybe we weren't doing before. What are the things we can take off the plate of our boss and make them look good to then get more promotion from there? And what are the things that we just need to continue doing? And so it's really helpful to ask these three questions as you're trying to create your updated definition of work. And as I said, depending on how fast the company is growing or how fast your career is growing, you might want to do this check-in on your definition of work either quarterly or annually at the least. So what will your new definition of work be? If you're identifying a new role that you're going for, or a new level that you'd like to be at in the next 6 months or a year or beyond, start thinking about how will you define work at that level? What does your day-to-day look like? Is it all meetings? Is it strategic think time? Is it a mix of writing code and planning projects and architectures? What can you see for yourself as that definition of work? Because once you embrace that, it's going to be much easier to step into the role that fits that definition of work. So just to recap, bored, ignored, and confused are the three big problems that I think we all face in some way. Sometimes we recognize symptoms of these problems, but these are really kind of the core root problems that can trap us if we're not careful. And when you focus on fixing those three problems, and it's a process to do it continually, it's not something that you fix it once and it's done. When you can focus on the outcome of going from reactive to proactive to strategic, it makes it much easier to identify the clarity for what you want in the next phase of your career. And so for people in our program, we find that they're able to identify that clarity within the first month of the program. And then from there, we help make the plan to advance and then ultimately shine in that new role. But if you had that kind of clarity, what would you do over the next 90 days? If you know exactly what role you're going for or what, level that you're looking to get within your company or externally, what would you do in the next 90 days? How would that kind of clarity and conviction change what you do over the next 90 days? Maybe you'd be applying to different kinds of jobs, or maybe you'd be interviewing around, or maybe you'd be building rapport and relationships with other key people within your company. So it all starts with that clarity that you get in the first month to then unlock the next 90 days and then 12 months. What would you be doing in 12 months? What would you be doing over the course of those 12 months to get to where you want to go? So I mentioned a few times now a program. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how the program works. And what's really cool is we're finding a lot of people are actually getting this covered by their employers. And so this is the way we actually set up the structure. And we've got live mastermind sessions 3 times a week. And this is an amazing place to be able to learn from others that are on the same career path, whether you're going from junior to senior or senior to leader or leader to a CTO. Being around others on the same career path is incredibly valuable. And so we create that environment in the mastermind sessions where you can learn from others that are doing exactly what you're doing, and also learn from other coaches and people that are further along than where you are. You also get one session a month of private coaching. And we find like a lot of us don't have much support on our career path, and it's something we really have to seek on our own. And so that private coaching is a really good way to check in on what our plan is and get that sounding board for like what to do next or how to handle that really tricky situation, or maybe there's conflict with someone that you really don't get along well with. Those coaching and those mastermind sessions are where you can get help for that. And we've got a whole program of skills and knowledge libraries. This is all the curriculum that will help you with the skill set that you need on the non-technical side. And the non-technical skills are what makes the most impact of your technical skills. So this could be leadership and management. It could be building influence. It could be building reputation. It can be managing expectations. It can be hiring for your team. We've got a whole library of different topics based on whatever skill that you need to be adding to get more leverage out of your technical skills that you already have. And we've also got a private community where everybody can help each other asynchronously and chat and share opportunities. Just being around other people that are like-minded is incredibly valuable. I mean, it's why you all are here today with this meetup. So as I mentioned, there is an investment, but what we're finding is a lot of people are actually getting this either covered by their employer. We have an expense template that we can give you that you can then take to your boss and say, here's why I need this. Here's how it's going to help me in my day-to-day job. And I'd like you to help pay for that. And so some people pay for it themselves because they realize the importance of investing in their career path, and how that pays dividends through the rest of their career. But others are often getting this covered and paid for by your employer, because most companies don't have the resources to create training programs internally to help you grow your career and transition more into leadership and management and get that extra leverage out of your technical skills so you can make more of an impact. So if this is something that you're interested in, I'm happy to share templates around what you can do to get this reimbursed by your boss. And I've got some action you can take here if this at all resonates with what you want to do for your career, or where you want to go. And so, if you just want to connect with us on LinkedIn, I love growing my network there. You can scan that QR code on the left to connect with us on LinkedIn. If you just want to ask some questions, maybe you want a sounding board for where your career is at, or just wondering if this is the right program for you. If you scan that middle QR code, would be happy to meet with you and talk after this call and answer any questions you have. If you're just curious how it works, or have other questions, I'm more than happy to chat. And then if you just know you're ready to go and you want to join us and be around other people who are working on their careers intentionally like this, and focused on making more of an impact with their technical skills, the QR code on the right is a way for you to enroll right now and join us right away. We're onboarding people every single week, and we're happy to welcome you in whenever you're ready to join. So with that said, that's all I've got for today. Hope you leave with a little bit of tooling that you can apply to your day-to-day, whether you're trying to build some influence and get some buy-in on an idea. Maybe you're trying to convince your team to take a certain approach, or whatever it is. But that's all I've got for today. And thank you, Sam, for inviting me today to talk about a little bit different of a topic here, but want to give you a chance to take some action on this stuff if it's interesting. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it, Todd. It was very insightful, and you definitely shed some light on some very interesting topics. I have a couple of wrap-up slides, but before I do that, I wanted to ask, are there any questions or comments for Todd? Feel free to enter them either into chat or come off of mute and address them verbally. We have a question from G. He said, I wanted to spot check annually how many people subscribe to Tech Leader Service. Also, do you do year over year keep in touch with the graduates?
Yes, and so I'm just checking. We've had 83 people go through the program since we started 2 years ago. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary, and many of our people actually are still with us years later. And so some graduate and move on, and we actually offer a program where they can come back and teach and learn how to be coaches and trainers of this curriculum to then teach the lower level program. So we have a few people that have graduated now have come back to teach other more junior folks, and then some of them just stay with us. As I mentioned, we've got some that have been, I think, at least 18 months. And so year over year, it's hard to say, but we stay in touch with everybody. We've got a talent registry where people that graduate, we then cycle them back to companies that are interested in looking for people that are intentionally upskilling their careers. And so it's another way to kind of stand out from some of the other folks on the market. So thanks for asking the question.
Very nice. Perfect. All right. So once again, the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on YouTube at the link listed there, youtube.com/@SamNasserMVP. And that link is posted in the chat. If you would please subscribe to the channel to get upload notifications. Tech events are also posted on my blog, samnasser.blogspot.com, and you can subscribe to that to get the updates as well. And another notable mention for the feedback eval forms. The link for that is also in the chat. For those that joined us after the start of the meeting, we have a 35% off offer on a selection of books from Manning.com with the discount code and the link also posted in chat. So job openings for who's hiring and who's looking for work. And I think someone mentioned something in chat. All right, so we have one person looking for work. Any open positions right now? whether junior or senior devs. If you would please make yourself known. And if not, you can always reach out to me afterwards. In addition, if you check out techsystems.com/IT-jobs, there are always job openings available there. And lastly, my contact information, snasser@nistechnologies.com. You can also find me on Twitter @SamNasser, the link to my blog. And last but not least, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. Much like Todd, I always look forward to growing my network, so I invite you to connect with me. And so with that, thank you all for attending and look forward to seeing you at the March meeting. And thanks again to Todd for joining us for a very insightful presentation. And so with that, thanks again, everyone, and good night.